Be me, Sandra, 43, marketing executive at a sustainable clothing company. Single mom raising my 16-year-old son Terry after his dad left when he was 8. Spent years building what I thought was the perfect mother-son relationship. Taught him about equality, respect for women, the importance of emotional intelligence. Always made sure he understood that masculinity doesn't mean dominance. Felt so proud when he'd come home from school and tell me about standing up to boys who were being inappropriate to girls. Thought I was raising the next generation right. Fast forward to last year, Terry starts spending every other weekend with his father, Jacob, again. Jacob remarried some woman named Jennifer, who's basically everything I stand against. Stay-at-home mom, super religious, makes those gross Pinterest crafts. The kind of woman who says things like happy wife, happy life, unironically. Whatever, I figured Terry was smart enough to see through their outdated lifestyle. Then Terry starts coming home different. Not dramatic at first, just little things. Stops helping with dishes without being asked. When I mention it, he shrugs and says, "That's women's work anyway." Excuse me. I sit him down for a conversation about how household labor should be shared equally. He just rolls his eyes and says Jacob told him I'd say exactly that. Apparently, his father has been filling his head with garbage about how I'm brainwashing him. Things escalate over the next few months. Terry starts questioning everything I've taught him. We're watching a movie with a strong female lead and he makes some comment about how unrealistic it is. Women aren't actually stronger than men, Mom. It's just biology. I explain that strength isn't just physical, that women have been held back by society. He goes, "Okay, but you can't ignore science because it hurts your feelings." Where did this come from? Catch him watching those awful YouTube videos. Not the really extreme stuff, but those intellectual guys who use big words to justify misogyny. When I try to explain why those viewpoints are harmful, he accuses me of trying to control what he thinks. Says Jacob told him I'd try to restrict his access to different perspectives. I'm not restricting anything. I'm trying to help him think critically. The breaking point comes during dinner last month. We're talking about his future plans, college, career stuff. Mention how great it is that his generation will have even more opportunities for equality. Terry looks me dead in the eye and says, "What if I don't want equality? What if I want to be the provider and have my wife focus on the family?" I nearly choke on my pasta. Try to stay calm. Ask him why he'd want to limit his partner's potential like that. He says it's not limiting, it's complementary roles, that men and women are naturally different, and there's nothing wrong with embracing that. Starts talking about how fulfilled Jennifer seems compared to my stressed lifestyle. Excuse me, I'm not stressed. I'm passionate about my work and making a difference. Realize Jacob and Jennifer have been working on him systematically. Terry tells me about their Sunday dinners where they discuss philosophy. Apparently, Jacob has been framing everything as, "Your mom means well, but she's been influenced by cultural Marxism." Cultural Marxism, my ex-husband learned some new vocabulary, I see. Jennifer apparently talks about how much happier she is since embracing her feminine nature. Makes me want to scream. Terry starts pushing back on everything. I suggest he take the advanced literature class with the female teacher. He wants to switch to shop class instead. When I ask why, he says he wants to learn practical skills. That Jacob says too much education makes men soft. My own son is rejecting intellectual growth because his father convinced him it's feminine. Worst part is seeing how this affects his relationships with girls. Used to be friends with this smart girl Emma from his debate team. Now he barely talks to her. When I ask about it, he says she's too argumentative. That's literally what you do on debate team, Terry. He quit debate team, by the way, said it was just complaining about problems instead of solving them. Try talking to Jacob about this. Big mistake. He acts all reasonable and says he's just providing balance to my perspective. Claims he's not undermining me, just giving Terry both sides. When I point out that basic human equality isn't a side, it's just right, Jacob gets that patronizing tone and says I'm being emotional. That this is exactly why Terry needs a strong male influence. I want to throw my phone through the window. Terry starts dressing differently, instead of the vintage band shirts and creative outfits he used to love. Now it's all khakis and polo shirts. Looks like a young Republican convention threw up on him. When I comment that his old style had more personality, he says Jennifer helped him pick clothes that are more mature. Since when does mature mean boring? The kid used to love our museum trips, especially the modern art sections, would spend hours analyzing symbolism and social commentary. Now, when I suggest going, he says art museums are pretentious, wants to go to the Natural History Museum instead to look at real science. Nothing wrong with natural history, but the sudden dismissal of art hurts. Feels like he's rejecting everything we used to bond over. Start noticing how he talks about his female teachers differently. Used to respect Ms. Rodriguez, his English teacher, thought she was brilliant. Now he complains that she plays favorites with the girls, that she's too political when she assigns books with social themes, the same books he used to love discussing with me. Asks why they can't just read normal stories instead. Halloween comes around. Terry wants to dress up as some historical military figure. Not inherently bad, but it's such a departure from his usual creative costumes. Used to love putting together elaborate artistic outfits. When I ask about his costume choice, he says Jacob suggested it, that it's important to honor masculine role models, whatever happened to honoring creativity and individuality. Catch him FaceTiming with Jacob and Jennifer one evening. They're all laughing about some joke I apparently wouldn't understand. When he hangs up, I ask what was so funny. Terry says they were talking about mom logic, that Jennifer finds it amusing how I always need to win arguments. Excuse me for teaching my son to think critically and stand up for his beliefs. Try to involve my sister Kate for perspective. She's more centrist than me, but still reasonable. Terry used to love his Aunt Kate, thought she was cool and funny. Now when she visits, he's polite but distant. Later tells me Kate is trying too hard to be like a man, because she works in construction and doesn't wear makeup every day. I don't even know who this child is anymore. Christmas shopping becomes a nightmare. Terry wants tools and sports equipment. Fine, nothing wrong with those interests. But when I suggest also getting him art supplies or books like usual, he wrinkles his nose and says those are kid things. Since when is creativity juvenile? Jacob apparently gave him a lecture about putting away childish things. New Year comes, and I'm trying to set intentions for our relationship. Sit Terry down for what I think will be a bonding conversation. Ask about his goals and hopes for the coming year. He says he wants to become more disciplined and focused. Sounds like he's quoting a self-help book Jacob probably gave him. When I ask what that means practically, he talks about building character through challenge. Apparently, Jennifer suggested he give up video games and social media for self-improvement. The video game thing actually worries me. Not because I think gaming is essential, but because he used to love creative games, building elaborate worlds. Now he says those games are escapist and unproductive. Wants to focus on real-world skills instead. There's nothing wrong with real-world skills, but why does it have to be either or? Valentine's Day hits, and Terry asks if he can skip our traditional mother-son dinner. We've done this every year since the divorce. Just us, nice restaurant, good conversation. He says it feels weird now that he's older. That Jacob says it might be emotionally confusing for him. What's confusing about a mother spending time with her son? End up eating takeout alone while Terry video calls with his dad. Spring parent-teacher conferences are eye-opening. Ms. Rodriguez mentions that Terry has become less participatory in class discussions, especially when they're covering books with female protagonists or social justice themes. He used to be one of her most engaged students. Now he sits quietly and looks bored during those units. She asks if there's something happening at home. Wish I knew what to tell her. Terry starts talking about college differently too. Used to be excited about studying literature or maybe sociology. Wanted to understand how society works so he could help improve it. Now he's thinking about business or engineering. Nothing wrong with those fields, but the reasoning bothers me. Says Jacob convinced him that liberal arts degrees are useless, that real men build things and create value. Spring break. Terry spends entirely with Jacob and Jennifer, comes back talking about their camping trip and male bonding time. Apparently, Jacob taught him hunting and fishing. Again, nothing inherently wrong with outdoor skills. But Terry describes it like he's discovered his true nature. Says being in the woods made him realize how artificial modern life is, whatever that means. Start noticing he's become judgmental about my lifestyle choices when I get excited about a work project promoting sustainable fashion. Terry asks why I care so much about virtue signaling. Virtue signaling, where did he learn that phrase? When I explain that I genuinely believe in environmental responsibility. He says Jacob warned him I'd say exactly that. Apparently everything I do is performative in their narrative. Mother's Day comes and goes with a generic card. Used to spend weeks crafting thoughtful gifts. Now it's clearly something picked up last minute. When I thank him anyway, he shrugs and says Jennifer reminded him to get something. At least someone remembered, but it stings that it wasn't his idea. Try suggesting family therapy to work through these changes. Terry reacts like I've suggested electroshock treatment. Says Jacob warned him I might try to pathologize normal male development. Normal male development doesn't include rejecting everything you used to value. Jacob apparently told him that therapy is just liberal indoctrination in disguise. Summer vacation approaches and custody. Arrangements become tense. Jacob wants Terry for most of the summer for character building, some kind of mentorship program through his church. When I research it, it's basically traditional gender role reinforcement camp. Terry is excited about learning real-world skills and masculine virtues. My objections are dismissed as me being controlling and afraid of him growing up. The night before he leaves for summer with Jacob. Try to have one last heart-to-heart conversation. Ask Terry if he's happy with these changes in himself. He looks confused by the question, says he's becoming who he's supposed to be, that Jacob helped him realize he was performing a personality to please me. The kid I raised, who cared about justice and creativity, was performing. Terry says he feels more authentic now, that embracing traditional masculinity feels natural and right. When I point out that he used to love art and literature and helping others, he says those interests were influenced by my expectations, that now he's free to be himself. How is conforming to his father's expectations more free than exploring his own interests? He leaves the next morning with a duffel bag full of khakis and polo shirts. Hugs me goodbye, but it feels perfunctory. Promises to call, but I can tell he's eager to start his summer of masculine development. Jacob picks him up, and they drive away talking excitedly about their plans. I stand in the driveway wondering where my son went. First week of summer, and Terry calls exactly once. Sounds happy and energetic, but completely foreign. Talks about wake-up drills and leadership exercises. When I ask if he's making friends, he mentions some boys with names like Hunter and Blake. Describes them as focused on excellence and not distracted by drama. Whatever happened to his diverse friend group who valued creativity and kindness? Try calling Jacob to check in and get updates. Jennifer answers instead and puts on this sickeningly sweet voice. Tells me Terry is thriving in a structured environment, that he's discovering his natural leadership abilities. When I ask to speak with him, she says he's busy with important activities. Important activities apparently don't include talking to his mother. Second week brings a postcard. Picture of some mountain landscape with building character written in bold letters. Terry's handwriting on the back. Learning valuable lessons. Talk soon. -M. Not love you, Mom, or miss you. Just a signed initial like I'm a business contact. The formality breaks my heart more than silence would have. Spend the summer questioning everything. Was I too pushy about my values? Did I not give him enough space to explore different perspectives? But then I remember all our great conversations about fairness and kindness, the way his eyes lit up when he understood complex ideas about justice, how proud I was of his empathy and thoughtfulness. That couldn't have all been fake. Kate comes over midsummer for wine and moral support, tells me this might just be a phase, that teenage boys often rebel by embracing opposite values from their mothers, but it feels like more than rebellion. Feels like systematic replacement of everything he used to be. Jacob didn't just offer alternative views. He convinced Terry his original self was wrong. August arrives, and Terry comes home for a week before school starts. Barely recognize the kid who walks through my door. Not just the buzzed haircut and rigid posture. His whole way of speaking has changed. Everything is yes ma'am and no ma'am, like I'm a drill sergeant. When I tell him he can just call me mom like always, he says Jacob taught him proper respect. Try to reconnect by suggesting activities we used to enjoy. Art museum gets a polite decline. Bookstore browsing gets dismissed as not productive. Even cooking together, which used to be our thing, feels stilted. Terry stands at attention while I explain recipes. Instead of chatting and experimenting like before, it's like talking to a well-programmed robot wearing my son's face. School starts and parent orientation feels like a war zone. Other parents who know our history give me pitying looks. Mrs. Chen approaches to ask how Terry is adjusting. Wait, no, that's not right. It was Mrs. Patterson. She mentions that Terry seems different, but doesn't elaborate. Probably doesn't want to get involved in family drama. Can't blame her, but the isolation stings. First month of school brings concerning reports. Terry has dropped all his creative electives. No more art class, no more drama club, no more creative writing. Instead, he's taking extra PE and joining something called Young Entrepreneurs Club. When I ask about this shift, he says Jacob helped him choose practical courses. That creativity doesn't build character or provide real value. Halloween approaches and Terry has zero interest in participating. Says costumes and trick-or-treating are childish. Used to love helping me decorate the house and planning elaborate outfits. Now when I put up decorations alone, he asks why I'm encouraging frivolity. Frivolity, he's 16, not a Victorian businessman. Parent-teacher conferences in November paint a clear picture. Every teacher mentions the same thing. Terry is polite, punctual, and completes assignments adequately. But he's lost all enthusiasm and creativity. Mrs. Rodriguez looks genuinely sad talking about his transformation, says it's like teaching a completely different student. Try reaching out to Emma, his old debate team friend. Her mom mentions that Emma misses Terry, but he barely acknowledges her at school. Apparently, he told someone that Emma is too argumentative for friendship, the same quality he used to admire in her intellectual curiosity. Jacob's influence has turned my son into someone who fears strong women. Thanksgiving becomes a negotiation nightmare. Jacob insists Terry spend it with their family unit, meaning him and Jennifer. Says traditional holidays should be celebrated in traditional family structures. When I point out that I'm Terry's family too, Jacob gets condescending, tells me I can see Terry for dessert if I want to participate constructively in my own relationship with my son. Christmas shopping reveals how completely things have changed. Terry's wish list reads like a catalog for future middle management. Dress shirts, leather accessories, books about leadership and success. When I suggest adding something fun or creative, he looks genuinely confused. Says Jacob taught him that material desires should serve personal development. Whatever happened to wanting things just because they bring joy? New Year's Eve. I'm planning a quiet celebration at home. Terry asks if he can spend it at Jacob's instead. Their church is having some kind of commitment ceremony for young men. Sounds like a cult initiation, but Terry is excited about making important promises. I spend midnight alone wondering if I'll ever get my real son back. Winter break ends, and the spring semester begins with new challenges. Terry announces he wants to transfer schools. Jacob found some charter school with traditional values and academic rigor. When I research it, the curriculum is basically conservative indoctrination disguised as education. My objections are overruled because Jacob has equal custody rights. The new school reinforces everything Jacob has been teaching. Terry comes home quoting philosophers I've never heard of. Not because they're particularly profound, but because they support traditional gender hierarchies. When I try to engage with these ideas critically, Terry shuts down, says I'm being emotional instead of rational. My 16-year-old son is mansplaining rationality to me. Spring break arrives, and Terry has zero interest in our traditional trip. Used to love exploring new cities, trying local food, visiting museums. Now he says travel should be purposeful, not recreational. Jacob has arranged some kind of wilderness survival camp instead, because apparently learning to start fires with sticks builds more character than cultural exposure. Realize I'm mourning the loss of a living child. The boy who used to debate social issues with passion and nuance is gone, replaced by someone who speaks in Jacob's talking points and Jennifer's platitudes. When I try to remind Terry of conversations we used to have, he dismisses them as childish thinking. Like developing empathy and questioning injustice were just phases he outgrew. Mother's Day approaches, and I brace myself for disappointment. Terry dutifully gives me a card and generic flowers. When I thank him, he says Jennifer helped him plan something appropriate. Appropriate feels like such a cold word for a mother-son relationship. Remember when he used to make elaborate handmade gifts and write heartfelt letters? Summer custody battle, round 2, begins early. Jacob wants Terry for the entire summer this time, some kind of leadership-intensive program that sounds even more concerning. Terry advocates for himself in family court, asking to spend more time with Jacob. Hearing my son tell a judge that his father provides better guidance destroys something in me. The night before he leaves for his second summer of character building, make one last attempt at honest conversation. Ask Terry directly if he remembers who he used to be, if he misses any aspects of his old interests or friendships. He looks at me with what might be pity and says Jacob warned him about this question, says his previous personality was inauthentic and influenced by cultural pressure, that now he's aligned with his natural masculine identity. When I ask if he's happy, he seems confused by the concept, says happiness is less important than purpose and discipline. My creative, joyful child has been convinced that joy itself is weakness. Terry leaves for his second summer program with confidence and enthusiasm. Hugs me goodbye with the same mechanical politeness as last year. Promises to write, but I doubt the letters will contain any real communication. Jacob and Terry drive away discussing objectives and development milestones. I wave from the driveway knowing I've lost him completely. Spend this summer in therapy, finally. Not because I think I'm wrong about gender equality or social justice, but because I need help processing this grief. My therapist helps me understand that Jacob used sophisticated manipulation techniques, slowly replacing Terry's worldview with one that positioned me as the enemy. Knowing the tactics doesn't make losing my son hurt any less. Realize Jacob never wanted shared custody for Terry's benefit. This was always about winning some kind of ideological war, using our son as a weapon to prove that his worldview is superior. Terry became a project to demonstrate that traditional masculinity works better. The cost was everything authentic and beautiful about who he used to be. Summer ends and Terry returns more transformed than ever. Now he talks about his 5-year plan and building generational wealth. At 17, he's already thinking like a middle-aged conservative businessman. When I ask about college plans, he says Jacob found programs that align with his values, meaning schools that will reinforce everything he's learned to believe. Senior year begins, and I'm basically a stranger in my son's life. Terry is polite and respectful, but treats me like a distant relative. When friends ask how he's doing, I don't know what to say. Academically, he's successful. Behaviorally, he's compliant. But the spark that made him uniquely himself is completely gone. Watch him at his graduation ceremony, feeling proud and heartbroken simultaneously. Proud because he's accomplished and articulate and headed to college. Heartbroken because the person walking across that stage isn't the son I raised. Jacob and Jennifer beam with satisfaction at their successful project. I applaud politely while mourning the boy who used to question everything. Now Terry is 19 and in college studying business. Calls dutifully once a month with updates about grades and activities. Conversations are pleasant but superficial. When I ask about friends or interests, he describes study groups and professional networking. The kid who used to stay up late discussing philosophy now talks about market trends. Sometimes I wonder if the real Terry is still in there somewhere, buried under years of careful reprogramming but not completely erased. Then he'll say something particularly dismissive about women's issues or social justice. And I realized Jacob's work was thorough. My son genuinely believes that his mother's values are naive and destructive. Holidays are cordial affairs now. Terry divides time equally between households per the custody agreement. But it's clear he feels more comfortable at Jacob's house, where his worldview is validated and reinforced constantly. At my house, he's a polite visitor waiting to return home. Dating becomes impossible to discuss. Terry talks about finding a traditional girlfriend who shares his values, someone who wants to be a supportive wife and dedicated mother. When I mention that limiting a partner's potential seems unfair, he gives me that patient look and explains why I'm wrong, using arguments that sound suspiciously like Jacob's talking points. The hardest part is accepting that this might be permanent, that the sensitive, creative, justice-minded boy I raised might be gone forever, replaced by someone I don't recognize or particularly like. Terry isn't cruel or malicious, just completely alien to everything I believe. Jacob succeeded in creating his perfect conservative son. The cost was my relationship with my child. People ask if I have any regrets about how I raised Terry, wonder if I was too political or pushy about my beliefs. But then I remember the boy who cried watching documentaries about injustice, who wanted to make the world better for everyone, who believed in kindness and creativity and questioning authority. That kid was real and beautiful and worth fighting for. Jacob didn't offer Terry better values. He offered him a simpler worldview where questioning isn't necessary, where traditional hierarchies provide clear structure and purpose. Terry chose certainty over complexity, comfort over growth. And I have to live with the fact that my own son rejected everything I tried to teach him.